Last time, we had a look at the 2007 Transformers film. If you haven't seen that video, or read my Substack post on it, I mentioned that the film itself was highly enjoyable, even without the nostalgia goggles clouding my vision. You'll also probably remember me saying that the second film was a guilty pleasure of mine. There, I said it. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen is a guilty pleasure of mine. I am aware of people saying that the film was the worst Transformers film of all time, mainly due to the writing and the creative choices taken with the film. I agree with some of the points raised, but I do find the film somewhat enjoyable in its own right. And it isn't as bad as The Last Night or Rise of the Beasts. Those films can go screw themselves. As with the previous review, we'll look at the behind the scenes of the film, the plot of the film itself, as well as the characters, and then the stuff I liked and disliked about the film. And of course there will be spoilers ahead. So without further ado, let's begin! Development of the film began at some point in May 2007 when Paramount decided to greenlight a second Transformers film. This was a full month before the first film even premiered, by the way, which really says a lot about Paramount's confidence in their own projects. From what I was able to find online, there were a lot of issues that plagued the film's production. According to Michael Bay, the main underlying issue was the writer's strike of 2007 to 2008. The writer's strike had caused a lot of issues with several projects during this time. Among them included Lost, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, and even Iron Man, surprisingly. Focusing on this film in particular, Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman, who returned to write the screenplay for this film, provided Michael Bay with a plot outline and left him to work on a 60-page screenplay, which explains rather a lot actually. As soon as the strike finished, Orci and Kurtzman would then finish the screenplay with the help of Aaron Kruger. According to Orci, they spent 4 months locked in 2 separate hotel rooms writing the script, with them corroborating their work at least twice a day. Around the same time, the marketing for this film would take off, with 2 websites being created for the film, TheRealEffingDeal.com and GiantEffingRobots.com. And yes, these were actually real. Interestingly, the former can actually still be accessed via the Wayback Machine. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. It's also worth noting that the URL for Giant Effing Robots now links to the Transformers Facebook page, which is very ironic and somehow incredibly hilarious. As for the casting of the film, most of the cast from the 2007 Transformers film returned. Alongside them were new additions such as Raymond Rodriguez as Leo, Isabel Lucas as Alice or the Pretender, veteran Transformers voice actor Frank Welker as Soundwave, Devastator, Ravage, Reedman and Grindor, Mark Ryan as Jetfire, Andre Sogluzzo as Sideswipe, Tom Kenny as Skids and Wheelie, yes, SpongeBob was in this film, and Tony Todd as the Fallen. Now we come to the overall plot of the film. If you haven't seen this film, then I advise skipping ahead to this timestamp to avoid spoiling yourself. Without further ado, let's just carry on. 2 years after the events of the 2007 film, the Autobots have settled on Earth and formed an alliance with the human government to counteract the Decepticons. This takes them on several different incursions around the globe. One particular incursion in Shanghai reveals that the Decepticons are clearly searching for something. They are warned that the Fallen shall rise again, to which Optimus responds by shooting the Decepticon dead. I will say that the Shanghai incursion is one of my favourite moments in any film, mainly due to the action, the visuals, and also the camaraderie between the Autobots and military officials. However, this awesome opening sequence is brought down by the fact that the mystery surrounding the Fallen is revealed within the first 3 minutes of the film. Before the Shanghai sequence, we see him setting up a mysterious machine with several other ancient Cybertronians, and also tormenting some ancient humans. As a creative writing student myself, I find this highly frustrating as any semblance of intrigue and mystique is immediately thrown out the window within the first 5 minutes. After the Shanghai incursion, we cut to Sam Witwicky packing up for college. I will say my feelings on this sequence have fluctuated over the years. As a kid, and as a teen, I was honestly wishing for it to be over and done with a lot sooner. But now as an adult, I find myself relating to this sequence a lot and kinda get a little bit of a chuckle every time I watch it. Especially with Sam's mom doting over Sam, which reminds me of my own mom, Aunt and Nan, doting over me non-stop, as well as the infamous dog sex joke, which, whilst I didn't find it funny as a child, I now can't help but be reminded by my 2 dogs, who perform similar acts. When packing, he finds a sliver of the destroyed Allspark has embedded itself on the shirt he wore during the first film's climax. This sliver of the Allspark embeds knowledge of another Energon source within his mind. And this ends up causing Sam to lose his marbles and see glyphs everywhere he goes, which does make for some pretty funny scenes. Well, funny in my opinion. No, moving on. When he arrives at college, he ends up having to contend with campus life. He shares his dorm with Leo Spitz, a crazy conspiracy theorist and blogger, and has to contend with Alice, a seemingly normal college girl who eventually turns out to be the Decepticon pretender. Yes, the pretenders were in this film, and yes, I find that they were executed pretty well in this film. With regards to Alice in particular, it does create a surprisingly interesting, albeit short-lived conflict with Sam and Michaela, where the latter thought Sam cheated on her when in actuality Alice was just trying to get information from Sam. Meanwhile, the Autobots are having trouble collaborating with the US government, who decides to send Director Galloway to try and get them to leave Earth. Galloway ends up unintentionally revealing the location of both a shard of the Allspark and Megatron's resting place, which leads to Soundwave to dispatch Ravage and a Minicon named Reedman to retrieve the shard, and then use it to revive Megatron. Upon revival, Megatron reassumes command of the Decepticons, and works with the Fallen to retrieve the knowledge that now lies within Sam's mind. This culminates in Optimus and Megatron duking it out in another awesome action sequence, which Optimus dominates the entire fight, only for Megatron to use a sneak attack and backstab and blow up Optimus' spark. Following this demoralising turn of events, Sam, Michaela and Leo flee with Bumblebee, Skids and Mudflap. We will touch on Skids and Mudflap later, but for now, let's focus on the plot. The group are forced to seek out Simmons, who is pretty unhappy to see Sam and Michaela, mainly due to the two of them getting Sector 7 shut down. Regardless, he helps them find Jetfire and deciphers the meaning behind Sam's glyphs, which turn out to be a riddle disclosing the location of the Matrix of Leadership. Speaking of the Matrix of Leadership, it seemingly comes out of nowhere and supersedes the Allspark in terms of priority. We will be touching on this later, but for now, let's just get back to the story at hand. Matrix of Leadership, however, does play an important role as it's key to activating a super weapon which is capable of destroying the sun. We do learn that the Fallen and the other Primes fought over the Matrix, where the Fallen lost and the Primes healed it away. And as for the super weapon, which I will be referring to as the Star Harvester from here on out, it was used as a skeleton for the Great Pyramids of Giza. Eventually Sam and the group find the Matrix, and then they plan to revive Optimus with it. At the same time, however, the Autobots and their human allies arrive in Egypt where the stage is set for the final battle. Speaking of the final battle, it has to be one of the best set pieces in the entire film. The Decepticons have sent around 13 protoforms to deal with the Autobots and their human allies, all the while trying to flush out Sam and Michaela. At the same time, Simmons, Leo and the Autobot twins have to deal with the Constructicons, who combine into Devastator and absolutely wipes the floor with them. With regards to the writing aspect of the final battle, I honestly enjoyed how high the stakes were, especially since the humans and Autobots were initially outnumbered and outmatched by the Decepticons. I also enjoyed the moment when Sam died, trying to revive Optimus. It was honestly quite poignant and emotional, especially seeing Michaela pleading with Sam to return to her. This then culminates with Sam being revived by the Primes, who in turn reveal that the Matrix of Leadership can only be wielded by a Prime, or in Sam's case, an honorary Prime. Sam revives Optimus, the Fallen steals the Matrix, and reactivates the Harvester. Jetfire combines with Optimus and grants him the power to stop the Fallen and Megatron. Optimus engages the two in the final battle, and wins. Sam and Leo return to college, Michaela and Sam resume a relationship, and the Autobots now have to contend with their existence being public knowledge. That's it for the plot, but we're not exactly done yet. Before we move on to the negatives of the film, and there are plenty of them, let's have a look at the positives first. As always, the CGI and design of this film are exceptional, with the Transformers themselves being incredibly well designed and exceptionally animated. Among my favourites in this film would have to be Devastator, Soundwave, and The Fallen. The Fallen sports this ancient Egyptian aesthetic, which honestly works well for his backstory and the setting of the final battle. I would have preferred if they made his face resemble the Decepticon insignia, like in the concept art, as well as Transformers 1, but it works pretty well for the most part, and I can't exactly complain about that there. With regards to Soundwave's design, whilst it is a far cry from his Generation 1 design, his design in this film is easily one of my favourites. Plus, having him function as a cyber-training satellite is a genius evolution of the character in my opinion, as it leads heavily into his role as a Decepticon's espionage officer. Devastator's design, however, is easily my favourite one in the entire film. Plus, it's also my favourite design of the character to date. It is a massive departure from the more humanoid shape of his Gen 1 design, instead taking on a more alien-like appearance, and his colour scheme is striking and actually fits the character and his appearance pretty well, whilst having him be the same lime green and purple as his 80s counterpart would be somewhat nostalgic. The fact of the matter is that his G1 colours don't exactly work with his incarnation. All that said, however, I would like to see an incarnation of Devastator with his G1 silhouette, but with his film's colour palette. And yes, it might seem that I'm ignoring Devastator's crown jewels, but just hang with me for a moment. I will have things to say about it. Another standout would have to be the sound design and the music. The sound design in particular stands out with the transformation sequences and further expands upon the already impressive CGI and cinematography. I wouldn't even know what this film would do without it. There is an amazing video done by Lunarrisk who explores the importance of sound design in films. However, he uses Dune as an example. I highly advise you to check it out. Our link is in the description below. And as for the music of the film itself, well, it had Steve Jablonsky return and it's nothing short of a masterpiece. Need I say anything more? Heck, even Linkin Park decided to contribute to the soundtrack. With the 07 film, Michael Bay decided to include Linkin Park's What I Have Done. This time, however, Linkin Park decided to step in and contribute an ending theme for the film. This song being New Divide, which is honestly one of my favourite Linkin Park songs to date. They would do this again for Dark of the Moon as well, but that's a story for another time. Other things I liked were some of the jokes actually landing. Not all the jokes, mind you, but some of them. This would include the infamous tighter shirt scene, Sam losing his marbles in class, well, in my opinion it was kind of funny, and also the parachute scene with Galloway and Lennox, which, oh yeah, also any scene involving Simmons or Leo were pretty funny, with John Turturro and Raymond Rodriguez easily being the comedic highlights of this film. I will also say that the story itself, in retrospect, is okay. It isn't bad, but it isn't great. Some of the ideas introduced, such as the matrix of leadership being the key to a superweapon, the Pretenders making an appearance, the Transformers themselves visiting Earth thousands of years before Megatron, and Sam being made an honorary prime were decent. And of course, the action sequences in this film were nothing short of amazing. The Shanghai incursion, the forest battle, and the final battle in Egypt are easily some of my favourite sequences in the entire film series, as well as probably in film in general. And now we come to the stuff that I disliked, which there is a fair bit. Most of it is stuff that has been covered to death, but I will try to cover everything as best I can, especially since this is stuff I happen to agree with. For starters, whilst I have mentioned that I liked some of the jokes in this film, the rest of the jokes in this film are cringy and outright unnecessary. For example, the sequence of Sam moving into college could have been cut down significantly in order to give more time to the overarching plot. I don't think anyone exactly wanted to see Sam's mum get high on pop brownies and make a fool out of herself. Examples of this unnecessary humour would have to be Devastator's infamous scrotum. Whilst I have said a lot of positive things about Devastator's design, I can't exactly get over the fact that the VFX artists and Michael Bay decided to add a pair of overhaul balls right onto his crotch to mimic a man's scrotum. Yes, they gave Devastator a pair of testicles. No, I will not elaborate further, nor do I want to think about it. Another issue I had was with Jetfire's character. All I could say about Jetfire's character was that he was just this grouchy old robot. Need I say anything more? Although I will say that the games actually did give him much better characterization. Especially with the Revenge of the Fallen game for Wii, where and if the tie-in game gives Jetfire better characterization, then that's saying a lot about the writers. Now we come on to my problems with the story itself. As I said earlier, I find parts of it okay, and some of the concepts that are brought up are executed very well. However, this film has a lot of plot holes that are almost impossible to ignore. Starters, the idea of the Transformers being on Earth for thousands of years, whilst interesting on its own, would have been even better if it was treated more as a mystery instead of being shown to us in the first 5 minutes of the film. There is also the matter of the Allspark fragments. One of them was used to revive Megatron, and it never appears again after this. An interesting plot thread that could have been explored was the Decepticons attempted to reconstruct the Allspark, or heck, even a villainous group of humans tried to create their own version. This was touched on in the comics, with Starscream constructing a second cube using the sparks of 5 Autobots as a power source, as well as a group of humans attempted to create their own version of the Allspark. I would have loved to see the film reuse either one of these ideas, but instead we are given nothing on this. There's also a second Allspark shard that was stuck to Sam's jersey from the events of a previous film. After inadvertently absorbing the knowledge and power of the Allspark and creating an army of living household appliances, Sam gave it to Michaela for safekeeping. When Optimus died, Michaela could have used it to revive him, and everything would have been fine and dandy. No! Instead, it was only used to revive Jetfire from stasis, and it was never even used again as the film decided to focus on the Matrix of Leadership as this one thing that can revive Optimus. Guys! You have a sliver of the Allspark! You could have just used that to revive Optimus! Also, as to how the Matrix revived Optimus, maybe the Allspark's power fused with that of the Matrix upon Sam's resurrection? But we aren't given anything as to what exactly happened. We do get closure on the whole Allspark and Matrix debacle in the film's supplemental material. In the novel and comics, it is explained that the Allspark did indeed fuse with the Matrix of Leadership in a similar manner to how it occurred in Transformers Prime. But the film decided not to disclose on this. The gripes I have for the writing would have to be with Megatron and the Fallen. In the first film, Megatron was built up as this unstoppable force of nature who fought his way through everything just to try and get to the Allspark. And boy howdy did they deliver on that. Here instead, he gets sidelined by the Fallen, who is built up as this massive threat, only to get curb stomped by Optimus at the very end of the film. The Fallen also has this massive problem, where he lacks any form of motivation. The film itself is called Revenge of the Fallen, but it is unclear as to what his revenge is for. Maybe it's revenge on humanity for indirectly causing the dynasty of Primes to wage war on one another? Or maybe it's revenge on the Primed for turning on him. Honestly, I don't really know, and the film doesn't even care to answer! And of course, you can't ignore the Autobot twins. The twins are by far some of the most insufferable characters I've come across in fiction. Not just in film, or video games, or in books, in fiction in general. These guys are treated as the comic relief of the Transformers, however, they are anything but funny. I am aware that people have penned these guys as racist stereotypes, and this was in the era before cancel culture, mind you. However, I don't exactly find them to be racist. Instead, I just find them annoying and unbearable to watch. Heck, even Michael Bay and Tom Kenny hate the twins just as much as I do. But other than that, I don't have much to say about the negatives. Primarily because people have touched upon this to death, and I honestly feel like I'm walking down a well-worn path just by talking about this. In conclusion, I find that Transformers Revenge of the Fallen isn't the best film I've seen. It's crass, it's terribly written in some places, and it's riddled with plot holes. However, I am willing to excuse those things for the amount of enjoyability that this film possesses. From the action sequences to some of the jokes, heck, even understanding how troubled the production was. The film itself can do with some massive improvements in various areas. Perhaps if they delayed it by a year or two, then we would have had a solid sequel. However, what we did get is serviceable at best, and at least it isn't as bad as some modern blockbuster films. I'm looking directly at you, Tron Ares, and Fantastic Four First Steps. Heck, I would even go as far as to say that this film is a guilty pleasure of mine. Mainly for the nostalgia factor, but also for the design elements, the effects, and the music and sound design. The next film in this series, however, I would argue is even more of a guilty pleasure of mine. And that will be the next film that I'll cover.